April 13th, 1945, 11:47 p.m. The Dutch town of Zwolle. Leo Major crouches in the shadow of a burned-out church, his single working eye scanning the cobblestone street ahead. The other eye, lost to a phosphorus grenade in Normandy, is covered by a black patch that makes him look more like a pirate than a soldier. His hands grip a Sten gun so tightly his knuckles have gone white. He can hear German voices, laughter, boots on stone. Somewhere in the darkness, a truck engine idles. He is alone, completely alone. His partner, Corporal Willie Arsenault, lies dead in a ditch 200 meters behind him, killed by a German patrol 10 minutes ago. The plan was simple. 2 Canadian scouts would sneak into Zwolle, gather intelligence, and report back. But Willie is gone, and Leo Major is standing in the center of a town occupied by 300 German soldiers. He has 2 choices. Turn back, admit failure, let the artillery flatten Zwolle in the morning, killing the Dutch civilians still hiding in their basements. Or he can do something so insane, so reckless, that no officer in the Canadian Army would ever authorize it. He can liberate the town himself. Major checks his ammunition. 4 magazines for the Sten, 2 grenades, a pistol with 8 rounds. He looks at the church tower where a Nazi flag hangs limp in the windless night. Then he starts walking toward the German garrison. Leo Major was never supposed to be a war hero. Born in 1921 in New Bedford, Massachusetts, to French-Canadian parents, he grew up poor in Montreal. He worked as a laborer, hauling crates and fixing machinery. When World War II broke out, he enlisted in the Régiment de la Chaudière, a French-Canadian infantry unit. His superiors immediately hated him. Major had a mouth. He questioned orders. He refused to salute officers he didn't respect. During training in England, a British general visited the regiment to inspect the troops. Major, standing in formation, refused to salute. When the general demanded to know why, Major replied, "I don't salute because I work for a living. You don't." He was almost court-martialed. But Major had one skill that kept him in the army. He was an exceptional scout. Silent, ruthless, fearless. During the Normandy invasion in June 1944, Major and his unit fought through the hedgerows of France. On D-Day +6, a German phosphorus grenade exploded near his face. Shrapnel tore into his left eye. Medics wanted to evacuate him. Major refused. He ripped off the bandages, picked up his rifle, and kept fighting. He would spend the rest of the war with one eye. His commanders tried to discharge him. Major refused again. "I only need one eye to shoot Germans," he said. The Canadian Army, desperate for experienced soldiers, let him stay. They assigned him to reconnaissance, scouting enemy positions, gathering intelligence, staying out of direct combat. But Leo Major didn't do anything the Army way. By April 1945, the war in Europe was ending. The Allies were pushing deep into Germany. The Régiment de la Chaudière was assigned to liberate the Netherlands, a country starving under 5 years of Nazi occupation. The Dutch were dying. Food supplies had been cut off. Civilians were eating tulip bulbs to survive. The German army was retreating, but they still held key towns and bridges. One of those towns was Zwolle. Zwolle sat on the IJssel River in eastern Netherlands. It was a strategic crossroads. Roads and railways ran through it. If the Canadians wanted to push deeper into Germany, they needed Zwolle. But German forces had fortified the town. Machine gun nests, mortar teams, at least 300 soldiers. Canadian intelligence estimated that taking Zwolle would require a full-scale assault. Artillery would pound the town for hours. Infantry would move in afterward to clear the rubble. The problem? The Dutch civilians. Thousands of people were still trapped in Zwolle. If the Canadians shelled the town, they would kill the very people they were trying to liberate. The Canadian commander, Lieutenant Colonel Jacques Dextraz, needed intelligence. He needed to know exactly where the Germans were positioned before ordering the attack. He called for volunteers. 2 men stepped forward, Leo Major and Corporal Willie Arsenault. The mission was simple. Sneak into Zvola under cover of darkness, count the German soldiers, locate their positions, report back. Do not engage. Do not start a fight. Just gather information and get out. Major and Arsenault moved out at 10 p.m. on April 13th. They crossed the Isel River in a small boat. The water was freezing. The current dragged at the hull. On the far bank, they climbed into the ruins of a farmhouse and began moving toward the town. The streets were dark. No streetlights, no moon, just the faint glow of German cigarettes in the distance. Then, 20 minutes into the mission, they ran into a German patrol. 4 soldiers, walking down a side street. Arsenault saw them first. He turned to signal Major. The Germans saw the movement. They opened fire. Arsenault was hit in the chest. He collapsed into the mud. Major returned fire, killing 2 Germans instantly. The other 2 ran. Major dragged Arsenault into an alley. His partner was still breathing, but barely. Blood poured from the wound. Major tried to stop the bleeding. Arsenault grabbed his wrist. He whispered something in French. Then he died. Leo Major knelt in the alley for 30 seconds. His partner was dead. The Germans knew someone was in the town. Reinforcements would come. The mission was over. But Major didn't leave. He stood up. He reloaded his Sten gun. He looked at the dark streets of Zvola, and he made a decision that would change the war for an entire town. He was going to kill every German in Zvola, or scare them so badly they would run. Leo Major's plan was not complicated. It was insane. He would move through Zvola like a ghost, attack from the shadows, make the Germans think they were facing an entire platoon, use speed, use noise, use terror. He would hit them so hard, so fast, so unpredictably that they would panic and retreat. 1 man, 300 Germans. Major moved to the first German position, a machine gun nest set up outside a bakery. 2 soldiers sat behind sandbags, smoking cigarettes. They were relaxed, laughing. They thought Zvola was secure. Major crept within 10 meters. Then he pulled the pin on a grenade and threw it. The explosion shattered the night. The machine gunners died instantly. Before the smoke cleared, Major was already sprinting toward the next position, a supply depot 2 blocks away. He fired his Sten gun in short bursts. The muzzle flash lit up the street like lightning. German soldiers scrambled for cover. They shouted in confusion. "How many are there?" someone yelled in German. Major didn't stop. He threw his second grenade into the depot. Ammunition crates exploded. Flames erupted. Then he disappeared into an alley. The Germans were in chaos. They thought they were under attack by a Canadian assault force. Officers screamed orders. Soldiers fired wildly into the darkness. Major used the confusion. He circled behind them. He found a German staff car parked outside a hotel, the temporary headquarters for the Zvola garrison. 4 officers were inside, studying maps. Major kicked open the door. He fired 6 rounds. All 4 officers collapsed. He grabbed their maps and ran. Now the Germans had no command structure. No one knew who was in charge. Soldiers fired at shadows. They shot at each other. Major kept moving. He found a German mortar team setting up in a courtyard. He killed them with his pistol. He found a radio post. He tore out the wires and smashed the equipment. Every few minutes he would fire his Sten gun into the air, making sure the Germans heard him, making them think the Canadians were everywhere. But Major had a problem. Ammunition. He had burned through 2 magazines. He had 1 grenade left. His pistol was nearly empty, and the Germans were starting to organize. He could hear whistles, orders being shouted. They were forming search parties. If they cornered him, he was dead. Major needed more firepower. He moved toward the Zvola train station, a large stone building on the eastern edge of town. German trucks were parked outside. Supplies, fuel, weapons. Major crept to the loading dock. A single guard stood by the door, his rifle slung over his shoulder. Major approached from behind. He used his knife. The guard dropped without a sound. Inside the station, Major found what he needed: crates of ammunition, stick grenades, a German MP-40 submachine gun. He loaded his pockets. He slung the MP-40 over his shoulder. Then he heard voices. German soldiers were entering the building from the other side, at least 10 of them. Major had seconds. He grabbed a crate of grenades. He pulled the pins on 4 of them. He threw them into the main hall of the station. Then he ran. The explosion was massive. The entire building shook. Windows shattered. Fire roared through the loading dock. German soldiers screamed. Major was already outside, sprinting down an alley. Behind him, the train station burned. By 2 a.m., Zwolle was in full panic. German soldiers abandoned their posts. Officers ordered retreats. Trucks roared to life. Convoys began moving east, toward the German border. They thought the entire Canadian army was attacking. They didn't know it was one man. One half-blind French Canadian with a death wish. But Major wasn't done. At 3:15 a.m., Leo Major encountered the last major German unit still in Zwolle. A Gestapo officer and 8 SS soldiers were loading files into a truck outside the town hall. The Gestapo had been using Zwolle as a regional headquarters. They had interrogation rooms in the basement, torture chambers, lists of Dutch resistance members. The officer, a tall man in a black uniform, was shouting at his men to hurry. The Canadians were coming. They needed to evacuate. Major crouched behind a fountain in the town square. He counted the soldiers. 9 targets. He had 1 magazine left for the Sten gun, maybe 20 rounds. The MP-40 had a full magazine, 32 rounds. His pistol had 3 bullets. He calculated the odds. If he missed even once, they would overwhelm him. He decided to talk first. Major stepped out of the shadows. He aimed his Sten gun at the Gestapo officer. In broken German, he shouted, "Drop your weapons! The Canadian army is here! You are surrounded!" The SS soldiers froze. They looked at Major. They looked at each other. The Gestapo officer stared at the one-eyed man standing alone in the square. For 5 seconds, no one moved. Then the officer laughed. "One man?" he said in German. "You expect us to surrender to one man?" Major didn't hesitate. He shot the officer in the chest. The man collapsed onto the cobblestones. The SS soldiers panicked. 2 of them raised their rifles. Major cut them down with the Sten gun. The others scattered. Major pursued them through the town hall. He killed 3 more in the corridors. The remaining soldiers fled out the back door and disappeared into the night. Major stood in the empty town square. His ears rang from the gunfire. Smoke drifted through the streets. The town hall was burning. The train station was burning. German trucks were streaming out of Zwolle in every direction. He checked his ammunition. The Sten gun was empty. The MP-40 had 6 rounds left. His pistol had 1 bullet. He reloaded and kept moving. By 4:30 a.m., Major had swept the entire town. Every German position was destroyed or abandoned. Every officer was dead or gone. The garrison had completely collapsed. 300 German soldiers had retreated from Zwolle because they believed they were facing an overwhelming Canadian force. They had been running from one man. Major found the town's central square. Dutch civilians were emerging from basements. An old man saw Major's Canadian uniform and started crying. A woman kissed his hand. Children gathered around him. They didn't understand what had happened. They only knew the Germans were gone. Major was exhausted. His uniform was torn. His hands were covered in gunpowder burns. His single eye was bloodshot. He walked to the church tower, the same tower where the Nazi flag had hung. The flag was gone now. Someone had torn it down. Major climbed the tower stairs. At the top, he found a Dutch flag, hidden for 5 years by the townspeople. He raised it. At 5:47 a.m., the sun rose over Zwolle. The town was free. Major walked back to the Canadian lines. He crossed the Isel River alone. When he reached the regiment, Lieutenant Colonel Dextras was waiting. Dextras stared at Major. "Where's Arsenault?" he asked. "Dead," Major said. "Did you get the intelligence?" Major pulled out the German maps. "I did better than that. The town is yours. I killed the officers. The rest ran. Zvol is liberated." Dextras didn't believe him. He thought Major was in shock. He sent a patrol into Zvol to confirm. 30 minutes later, the patrol radioed back. The town was clear. No Germans. No resistance. Dutch flags were flying from every building. The Canadian Army entered Zvol at 8 a.m. without firing a single shot. The liberation of Zvol spread through the Allied command like wildfire. Officers didn't believe the reports at first. One soldier? One man liberated an entire town held by 300 Germans? It sounded like propaganda. But the Dutch civilians confirmed every detail. They had watched from their windows as a lone Canadian soldier moved through the streets. They had heard the explosions. They had seen the German convoys fleeing in terror. The Régiment de la Chaudière marched into Zvol on the morning of April 14, 1945. The streets were lined with Dutch families. Children waved flags, women threw flowers, old men saluted. They cheered for the Canadians. But they asked for one name: Leo Major. Where was the soldier with one eye? Where was the man who saved their town? Major was back at the regimental headquarters, sitting on an ammunition crate, cleaning his weapons, exhausted. Lieutenant Colonel Dextras approached him. "They want to give you a medal," he said. "The Distinguished Conduct Medal, for what you did in Zvola." Major looked up. His single eye was cold. "I don't want it." Dextras blinked. "What?" "I don't want the medal," Major repeated. "Montgomery will have to give it to me, and I don't take medals from that coward." He was referring to Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, the British commander of Allied ground forces in Europe. Major despised Montgomery. He blamed him for the disaster at Dieppe in 1942, where Canadian forces were slaughtered on the beaches of France. Major had lost friends at Dieppe. He considered Montgomery incompetent, a glory hound who sent men to die for his own reputation. Dextras tried to reason with him. "Leo, this is the second highest medal for valor in the Commonwealth. You earned it. Take it." Major shook his head. "If Montgomery gives it to me, I'll spit in his face. Tell them I refuse." Dextras sighed. He walked away. Later, the Canadian Army recorded Major's refusal in the official report. The medal was offered. Major declined. It was the only time in the entire war that a soldier refused the Distinguished Conduct Medal. But Major's action in Zvola had consequences beyond medals. The German retreat from Zvola created a gap in the Nazi defensive line. Canadian forces poured through. The 2nd Canadian Infantry Division advanced 20 kilometers in 2 days. Other German garrisons, seeing what happened in Zvola, abandoned their positions without a fight. The entire eastern Netherlands collapsed within a week. The war in Europe ended 26 days later. On May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered. Leo Major was still alive, still fighting, still refusing to salute officers he didn't respect. After the war, Leo Major returned to Canada. He tried to live a normal life. He worked as a pipe fitter in Montreal. He married. He had children. But the war never left him. He had nightmares, flashbacks, the smell of cordite, the sound of German voices in the dark. In 1950, the Korean War broke out. Major was 30 years old. He had a family, a job. He could have stayed home. But when the Canadian Army called for veterans to re-enlist, Major volunteered. His wife begged him not to go. Major kissed her and said, "I'm a soldier. It's what I do." He was assigned to the Royal 22nd Regiment, the Van Deus, and sent to Korea as a sergeant. In November 1951, his unit was ordered to capture a strategic hill called Hill 355. The Chinese army held the position with over 14,000 soldiers. The Canadians had fewer than 200 men. The battle lasted 3 days. Major led assaults up the frozen slopes. Chinese machine guns tore through the Canadian lines. Major was hit by shrapnel. He kept fighting. He organized counterattacks. He carried wounded men on his back. When the Canadians finally took Hill 355, Major had single-handedly captured 18 Chinese soldiers and killed dozens more. For his actions in Korea, Leo Major was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal, again. This time, he accepted it. Montgomery was no longer involved. The medal came from the Canadian government. Major wore it once, at the ceremony, then locked it in a drawer. He returned to Canada in 1953. He never spoke about the war unless asked. He worked, he raised his children, he grew old quietly. But the people of Zwolle never forgot him. In the decades after the war, the Dutch town honored Leo Major in every way they could. A street was named after him, Rue Leo Major. A monument was erected in the town square, listing his actions on the night of April 13, 1945. Every year on Liberation Day, the townspeople gathered at the monument to remember the one-eyed Canadian who saved them. In 2005, 60 years after the liberation, the city of Zwolle invited Major to return for a special ceremony. He was 84 years old, half blind. His body was failing. But he agreed to come. When he arrived, 10,000 Dutch citizens lined the streets. They cheered. They cried. Children who had never met him held signs. "Thank you, Leo." Old men who remembered the night of terror saluted him. Major stood in the town square where he had killed the Gestapo officer. A Dutch general presented him with the Netherlands' highest military honor, the Knight of the Order of Orange Nassau. Major accepted it without a word. Then he turned to the crowd and said in broken Dutch, "I didn't do it for medals. I did it because it was right." He died 3 years later, on October 12, 2008, in Montreal. He was 87 years old. The story of Leo Major should be impossible. One man does not liberate a town held by 300 enemy soldiers. One man does not survive a phosphorus grenade to the face and keep fighting. One man does not refuse the second highest military honor because he hates the man giving it to him. One man does not volunteer for another war after everything he's seen. But Leo Major was not a normal man. He was a scout who refused to follow orders, a soldier who trusted his instincts over regulations, a fighter who believed that audacity and aggression could overcome impossible odds. He understood something that most soldiers never learn. Fear is a weapon. If you make the enemy believe they are facing a superior force, they will break. They will run. They will abandon positions they could have held. The Germans in Zwolle never saw Leo Major. They saw explosions in the dark. They saw their officers dead. They saw their command structure collapse. They heard gunfire from every direction. Their minds filled in the blanks. They assumed the Canadians had launched a full assault. They didn't know it was one man with a Sten gun and a handful of grenades. Major exploited that fear. He moved like a ghost. He struck without warning. He created chaos. And when the Germans ran, he didn't chase them. He let them go. Because his mission was never to kill every German in Zwolle. His mission was to save the Dutch civilians, to stop the artillery bombardment, to liberate the town without destroying it. He succeeded. Today, military historians study Leo Major's actions as a case study in asymmetric warfare. How one soldier, using speed and psychological warfare, can achieve what an entire battalion could not. Special Forces units, Navy SEALs, British SAS, Canadian JTF-2, teach his tactics. Move fast, strike hard, disappear. Make the enemy think you are everywhere at once. But Major never saw himself as a hero. When journalists asked him about Zwolle, he shrugged. "I was just doing my job," he said. When they asked him why he risked his life for a town full of strangers, he looked confused. "They needed help, so I helped them. What else would I do? That was Leo Major, a man who saw a burning world and decided to do something about it. A man who refused to accept the word impossible. A man who believed that one person with enough courage and stubbornness could change history. And on the night of April 13th, 1945, he proved it. The town of Zvola was supposed to be empty by morning, flattened by artillery, its people buried in the rubble. Instead, the sun rose on a liberated town. Dutch flags flew from every rooftop. Children played in streets where German soldiers had marched hours before. And somewhere in the shadows, a one-eyed Canadian scout walked away, his weapons still smoking, his mission complete. The Germans thought the town was empty. Then one Canadian soldier started shooting, and by dawn, 300 enemy soldiers were gone, vanished, running for their lives from a ghost they never saw. That ghost's name was Leo Major, and he changed the war, one bullet at a time.